So Eli Roth is serving up some new holiday horror in the film Thanksgiving. Will it leave us satisfied? Or is it just another flop that we're not gonna wanna gobble up? Stay tuned. Now before we get to the review, can we just appreciate how dope this popcorn clown resin statue is from Killer Clowns from Outer Space, made by my dear friend Nathan from Things and Stuff here on YouTube. Thanks, mate. So yeah, I just got back from seeing Thanksgiving, the new horror film from horror director Eli Roth. I'm a big fan of his, especially after the Hostel series. Now the basic premise of Thanksgiving is after a Black Friday riot ends in tragedy, a mysterious Thanksgiving-inspired killer named after the famous John Carver terrorizes Plymouth, Massachusetts, the birthplace of the famous holiday, Thanksgiving. And oh yes, there will be no leftovers. So interesting tidbit, this film is actually based on the mock trailer from Grindhouse back in 2007. Now Eli Roth directed the Thanksgiving trailer to be shown between the films Planet Terror and Death Proof as a double feature. And you can see a lot of that mock trailer in the final film. They've taken a lot of elements from that and injected them into the final film, which is really cool. Now, a lot of people have been saying that this is trying to be the new Halloween or like Black Christmas. Now, indeed, there is an opening POV shot that is very reminiscent of the Steadicam shot from the original Halloween with the heavy breathing. And there's also a nice little throwback of our main heroine looking out a window and possibly seeing the killer, exactly how Laurie looked out the window at school and saw Michael Myers across the road. But to me, it's Eli Roth's love letter to the franchise, as well as elements from, say, Scream, and even a soupçon of I Know What You Did Last Summer. I mean, even the mock trailer of Thanksgiving had elements of Halloween in there, but that was clearly a massive piss take. But as far as I'm concerned, this film was a horror highlight for me for 2023, and it caught me off guard of how much I enjoyed it. Firstly, let's talk about the prologue. So like I said, the basic premise of the film is after some horrific events at a Black Friday, a year later, a killer comes back. So the prologue is all around this Black Friday sale. Crowds are going absolutely nuts. The gore is brilliant and the comedy is brilliant. The interesting thing about this film is I did not expect to laugh this much, but it's one of those laughs where the gore is so bombastic and horrific, it's like, oh shit, that type of laugh. But not only was the prologue intense, funny, gory, but it also made me mad because it was such a satire and piss take on how horrific and intense crowds can be at Black Friday sales of the past. So job well done, prologue. It like set up exactly what we're in for the rest of the film. And like I said, we cut to a year later where it's leading up to Thanksgiving when our cast of characters start being stalked by a mysterious killer and start getting tagged in photos on Instagram that the killer has actually set up. Essentially just toying with them, and certain people from the Black Friday riots who caused havoc are also being targeted. A killer with an understandable motive. I like it. There is a massive whodunit aspect with this film. It's one of those things where you see a certain character do something and you're like, fuck it, he's the killer. Then another character will do something, you're like, scrap that, she's the killer. There are so many red herrings in this film, but it's done so well to the point where you're like, I don't fucking know who the killer is. Now, in terms of an acting standout for me, look, when it comes to acting in a horror film, you're not expecting a Shakespearean performance, you know, but the performances in this film were pretty solid. Teetering on schlocky at times, but I think schlocky has become instrumental in horror films. But definitely the standout actor to me in this film is character actor Rick Hoffman, who I fell in love with in the first Hostel film as the American client. He was just so creepy, and with that big cheesy shyster grin, I absolutely love it. And he's great in this. He doesn't have as much involvement as our main cast of meat sacks, but when he's on screen, he just has this presence, and I love him, like that goofy smile. Now let's talk about the killer, John Carver. I really dug seeing their process. Usually when you see a killer or a monster's process, it reveals too much of the killer or the monster. But we do see their process sprinkled throughout the film, what makes them tick, what they do behind the scenes, and it actually works because it sets up what's going to happen in the climax of the film. In terms of the appearance, he wears a John Carver mask, he's got the pilgrim hat, some black coveralls, pretty stock standard, but at the same time, standing out from the crowd just a little bit. I love the fact that they don't make this killer walk and yet somehow manages to catch up to our cast of meat sacks. They run and they're also clumsy. Great. Now let's talk about the gore and the special effects. It is practical effects paired with some CGI elements. Again, bombastic, bordering on Final Destination gore, just how absurd some of the kills are. Some of the instruments that are used to kill some people in the film is amazing. And again, makes you do that weird ass laugh. Oh, shit. We got a runtime of 1 hour and 47 minutes. solid. At the moment, I'm loving these hour 30, hour 40 run times. Towards the end of the second act, bordering into the third act, it does dip down a bit, does get a bit slow, which is a common mistake in a lot of films, or just a common trope in a lot of films for that matter. But once the going gets going, when the third act picks up, when we head to the climax, it's on. So guys, overall, I thought this was honestly just gonna be a generic, forgetful attempt at being up there with Halloween or even Black Christmas. Even though Halloween is just definitely in a league of its own, I feel like Thanksgiving did its own thing whilst paying homage to its predecessors, its famous predecessors for that matter. Eli Roth, who directed the film, also wrote it alongside with Jeff Rendell, and they have crafted a very unforgettable, funny, gory horror film. I had an absolute blast with this film. I think because it took me by surprise at how good it was. It's gory, it's hilarious, it's a brilliant whodunit, and I want to see more. But at the same time, if this just stood as a one-off, I'd be totally happy with that. The door has definitely been left open for a sequel, and it's got franchise material written all over it. It definitely has rewatch value. It's one of those things, get your mates over, get the drinks flowing, get some Uber Eats, and just all uncomfortably laugh together at how gory and funny this film is. It was an absolute pleasant and a half surprise for me, so with that, I'm going to be giving Thanksgiving 4 corn holders out of 5. Once you see the film, that will totally make sense. Love you guts, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.